5:15 a.m. and Claire Cox is on the floor of her manufacturing company that's located about 12 miles from the Mayo Clinic outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the reason she's there so early is because she's fixing herself a defect in one of her production machines that produces these high quality scrubs that nurses and doctors use that she sells at her medical apparel company. And she noticed the night, being the last one out of the office the night before. And she's there to fix the machine herself. And she has this all done, all complete, defect fix. She recalibrates the machine before 8 a.m. when her operations manager arrives. All done, all fixed. That's just who Claire Cox is. She is the founder and owner of a company called Vital Threads. This is an idea that she had when she was in college 15 years before, and she has grown this company to be one of the leading medical apparel businesses in the Midwest region. And it's got 85 employees and going strong. But Claire is the CEO, she is the lead designer, the head of manufacturing, the primary salesperson. Even with 85 employees, Claire is doing everything. She wears a lot of hats. She could open a hat apparel company next after this because of all the hats that she wears. But the one thing that she didn't do throughout this entire 15-year process is she never hired an M&A advisor or investment banker, never hired an M&A attorney or any consultant of any kind to get her business to go from starting in her college apartment all the way to this large multi-state player with 85 employees. Because Claire Cox built everything she has without help from anyone. In fact, that's her superpower. But it's also the thing that ended up costing her millions of dollars when she sold her company. Because one day, while Claire was going about her business, a company called Westline Brands showed up and made her an unsolicited offer for her business. Her product was a high quality. It covered multiple states in the Midwest. It was in all sorts of hospitals and medical clinics. They saw this brand everywhere because Claire had done such a great job in designing and developing this product. And what they ended up doing, she made contact with them through a business broker, is Westline offered her $6 million up front and then a $5 million earnout. So that's $11 million, which, from Claire's perspective, for 15 years of work, to get $11 million, that's a huge win. She's still young. She's a young, fiery, short little blonde woman that has multiple turns of this to do in her life. And this is her first big exit. So Claire negotiates the whole deal herself, because that's what she does. Remember, that's her superpower. And she uses her general corporate medical business attorney, a guy named Kevin Jones. But the problem with Kevin Jones is he's never seen one of these lower middle market deals, particularly when he's dealing with Westline Brands on the other side, who bring in their Chicago big law M&A partners, a guy named Scott Ward, into this transaction. And then Kevin calls Scott and they have a call, lawyer to lawyer call, where Scott Ward tells Kevin, hey, for a deal like this, I do these all the time. These are just standard market terms. There's a precedent form I pulled from the shelf, found and replaced a few names, a few numbers, and that's the document that you have. Now Kevin, Claire's lawyer, has no frame of reference, no way to check, doesn't have a database of term benchmarks. He's got no one to call within his firm that does this type of business. So from his perspective, he has no way of knowing whether this is true. So he believes him. They negotiate the PSA, basically looking for things that don't fit the business, that didn't make sense from the precedent form. And then Claire signs the deal, closes it, and that's when the problem started. Everything was all great. Everybody, they were in love. Westline was in love with the business. Claire was in love with Westline. She had $11 million coming. Then 60 days later, that's when it hit the fan. Because Westline, through their PSA, they've done this before, they know what they're doing. They first started systematically dismantling every operational lever tied to Claire's earnout. Remember, they had 6 up front, 5 in earnout. That's a lot of earnout, almost 50%. They sidelined a bunch of her products. The revenue targets that Claire needed to hit based on the earnout calculation from Ward's form PSA that was formulaically designed to screw her. All the revenue targets that they needed to hit, they were mathematically impossible. There was no way Claire was ever going to make any of these targets based on how Westline operated the business after they took over. The result of that, a big earnout payment for Claire of 0. And then Claire, using her superpower, self-reliant superpower, sues Westline, and after 4 years of litigation, the end result is Claire walked away with 3 out of the $11 million that she thought she was going to get and that she was promised. Not only that, she was tortured for 4 years of litigation after 15 years of her blood, sweat, and tears that went into this business that she created. Now here's what I want you to hear, and that is that Claire's instincts were real, her craftsmanship was real, and her negotiation skills were real. She did have these self-reliant superpowers. She's a remarkable woman. What she was missing in her exit was a team. So that's why today we're going to discuss 3 questions that every founder must answer before they get into a single negotiation, before they get going on this process whatsoever. And those questions are, who do you need on your team, and in what order should you hire them? How much is this going to cost, and how long is this actually going to take? And these are the right questions to ask. And unfortunately, for most founders that go through the sales process, they don't find out the answers to these questions until after their business is already sold. And they have to look back in hindsight and think, man. And sometimes they don't even know that this could have been different, because it might be their one and only time doing it. And they don't know that the answer to these questions and the failure to answer these questions is exactly why deals stall out, why your leverage, you feel like you have no leverage to the whole process, is that it's evaporating, and that founders like Claire lose control of the process. They feel like they're just being dragged around on a leash. What you need is a strategic map that'll guide you through this adventure. Because I'll tell you what, I have one thing that is for certain, and that this is going to be one of the biggest adventures of your life. And that's why I've designed the M&A Exit Compass to orient you in this transaction before you even begin. And the compass has 3 points, and that's people, cost, and timeline. A lot of this is driven by the size of your deal. So for purposes of this, I've broken this down into 3 tiers. So you can find out where your deal fits within the tier, because what you need will change based on the size of your deal. So in tier 1, I've got expedited is what I call it. These are $5 million to $15 million deals. These ones you can run with a lean team in a more straightforward structure. Then the simple standard, which is the ones that show up most of the time from my experience, those are the $15 million to $50 million deals. Now you're going to want a full, what I call A.R.M.O.R, I'll tell you the acronym in a second, A.R.M.O.R team, because these will become moderately complex. And then the third tier that we're going to talk about here is the complex standard, which is 50 to 100 million plus. And this one, you're going to need multi-layered people, because there's probably, when we get to the reinforcements, there's probably regulatory issues you got to address, and specialists that you've got to engage to make sure that you can successfully transact your business. So, compass point one, the people. I call this your A.R.M.O.R team. A.R.M.O.R is an acronym, A.R.M.O.R. That stands for, first, your architect, A, your M&A transaction attorney. This person is going to be the quarterback of your transaction. They're going to design your deal, negotiate your LOI, your PSA, coordinate with each of the team members, and importantly, limit your financial risk and protect your proceeds. Now, why do you hire this one first? Because an experienced M&A attorney often has what we call private information. And that is because of the numbers of iterations that they do in these deals, particularly when we're dealing with lower middle market deals, bigger small business deals. They have knowledge into things like the percentage of indemnity cap that goes in there and other earn-out structures that are common, and other financial terms, things that serve a pricing function for you to help make sure that you get the dollars that you deserve. And this pricing function really can't be replicated by a general attorney just because they know contractual rules or can read a legal book. These are, particularly for my work, I have a series of term benchmarks. I'm always tracking, always saving. I've got particular metrics that I review, study, capture to try to keep up with market terms. Now, this private information, this knowledge, goes directly into dollars in your pocket. And this is where the real upfront value is to making sure you get your M&A attorney, your architect, early in the process. So your second hire, your mathematician. Now, this is sometimes called a quality of earnings accountant. Usually these are found in the valuation services arms of boutique or large accounting firms. And you need this person to have experience with sell-side accounting, because what you're going to get from your mathematician is you're going to get validated financials, normalized EBITDA, and they're going to identify any add backs, which will help directly boost your multiple. So the return on investment of getting a mathematician involved is very simple, because there's three things that they deliver almost immediately. They're going to increase your perceived value by documenting your add backs. You're going to need that. You can't just make it up. Two, they're going to compress the timeline of your transaction, because you're going to be able to give the buyers everything in a nice little package so they can give it to their lender to get financing underwriting going day one. And then three, you're going to eliminate the main opportunity that buyers have. Sometimes it's a legitimate opportunity to retrade on the purchase price that you agree on, because you're going to have clean financials and you're going to take away their excuse, their belief that if there's a mistake here, there could be a mistake everywhere. That's what you're going to hear. So that's hire number two, your mathematician. And I say you want to hire your mathematician before your third hire, the Rainmaker. This is your M&A advisor or investment banker, because based on what you get out of your mathematician might change how you approach hiring your Rainmaker. So your Rainmaker is your market-facing engine of your transaction. They're going to find your buyers, they're going to create a competitive environment, craft your confidential information memorandum. That's your presentation that goes out to people that explains everything in a tightly packaged what you want it to say. And then they're going to manage the sales process, because you don't want to do that directly yourself in particular, and you don't want your lawyer doing that either. You want people to have these conversations back and forth. You want to have the M&A advisor or investment banker in that role, creating your competitive environment. Because a single buyer negotiation versus a competitive process, which your Rainmaker will create, can be the difference between like 10 to 20% of your enterprise value. It's a massive number. You're talking millions of dollars on an 8-figure transaction. And here's the critical point, and another place that Claire got wrong. Because she was approached by a business broker from Westline. Said, here, we got a match, no need to look anywhere else. She had no competitive process, no other buyers, and no leverage, really. And with one buyer who was love bombing her the whole time, making her feel great, this wasn't a negotiation at all. fact, it's more like a setup. And she had no idea what she could have actually gotten for that company. You need a competitive process. You need your Rainmaker. And because of this is your third hire, you've already got your M&A attorney that can help you find one. So that takes us to hire 4. This is the optimizer. The optimizer is your tax counsel. This is a lawyer. And they're going to structure your deal to maximize your after-tax proceeds. Now, when I was working on the buy side, we always had a tax counsel on call. Even when we were thinking about doing a deal, we'd say, hey, what should we know about the structure? Because it's that important. I mean, you do an asset sale versus equity sale, that could change the numbers. How you allocating your purchase price. For a lot of these deals, there's installment sale tax treatment you gotta make sure you get right. And then for founders, there's often some ancillary compensation, whether it's some real property lease or some consulting agreement or employment. You wanna make sure that that is structured correctly based on the deal in its entirety. In a well-structured transaction from a tax perspective versus a poor structured transaction from a tax perspective, the difference in your after tax proceeds, your net, the actual amount of money that you get to keep, maybe from the range of 10 to 25%. This could be, for some, the single biggest variable in your transaction. And some people don't even think about it until after it's all done and you can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle. So hire 4, optimizer. Hire 5, your reinforcements. So of our 3 tiers, if you're in the lower side, it's unlikely you're gonna need many of these reinforcements. These are specialty counsel, industry consultants, regulatory consultants, and these are ones that help you navigate your reps and warranties, help you navigate transferability of certain assets and certain rights. And this is really based on deal and business complexity. So this could be things like environmental, land and title. I do a lot of oil and gas related stuff. It's all based on your land rights, your title, mineral rights. You need specialists to go review and make sure those assets are legitimate and that they check out. You might have reps and warranty insurance. If you got particular risk associated with your business you're looking to protect, it needs to be underwritten. You got IP, you need an IP specialist to sort of review, make sure your IP, and you can make the reps and warranties that you want to make. And then you just have specialty regulatory advisors, either on a state level, federal level, sometimes international level, if you're going overseas. So, good news is, hire 1, your architect, is the one who will identify these for you and will let you know who and when you need to engage these people. Now let's talk about sequencing order because it matters. And let's talk about when you need to engage them from your projected closing date. So as you sit here, think, in the future, from this date, when do I want to close? And please don't say 2 weeks from now. That'd be crazy. So think of a real date from now when you anticipate closing your deal, handing the keys over. Now, working backwards from that date, your first hire is your architect, your M&A attorney. You're looking at 12 to 18 months before that projected closing date. I know it seems like a really long time, but trust me, that's how long it takes. And we'll talk about later in the timeline what goes wrong when you don't follow these basic timelines. Second, your mathematician. This is your quality of earnings accountant, valuation services, 9 to 15 months before close. You need to really lock down what your cash flow, what you really can, from a valuation perspective, go out and get. Third, your Rainmaker. This is your M&A advisor, investment banker, right? They're the competitive market creator. You want this 8 to 12 months before you're gonna close. Then fourth, your optimizer, your tax counsel, 6 to 9 months before close. They're there to make sure your documentation and your deal structure will be in a tax beneficial position for you. And fifth, your reinforcements is your specialists, 3 to 6 months before close. So this is gonna be probably in the LOI PSA stage, once you've already got somebody locked in, unless you got a particular issue you need to get out in front of. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your A.R.M.O.R team for your big exit. Now, each of these professional work products flow down. They feed the next one. So that's why the hiring sequence matters. A lot of people, mostly, they'll hire an M&A advisor and they'll say, throw a bunch of stuff out in the market and see if anybody's interested in my business. Don't do that. You know how the process works now. You see why the sequencing matters. Do it in the right order. It'll get you way better results and waste way, 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 way less of your time.